Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Speaking with Confidence with Kat Matson. Yes, I'm Kat, and on this podcast, I coach business owners, public servants, corporate contributors, and other impact minded, humble leaders how to speak with authority, confidence, and impact so you can contribute to the conversations that matter to you. And on today's episode, well, I'm doing just that again in terms of talking about how you can talk yourself up, talk about yourself without sounding too braggy. So, welcome. I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into it with you. Before I do that, though, I just wanted to give you a quick heads up. If you're listening to this episode in real time, like pretty much as it's released on Wednesday, the 21st of May or Thursday, the 22nd, then it's not too late to join me for my free Speakeasy elevator pitch practice session. At lunchtime, Brisbane time, on Thursday the 22nd, I'm hosting a free speakeasy session where you can rock up and practice your elevator pitch. You can get some feedback and coaching from me, and you can hear other people's elevator pitches and get that motivation and inspiration. And most importantly, you will practice exactly what we're talking about in this particular episode, which is how do you talk about yourself without sounding like a, oh, what's that word that starts with W but rhymes with banker? Yeah. How do you talk about yourself without sounding like an arrogant twat? So if you are listening before 12:30 p.m. on Thursday the 22nd of May, then make sure you click the link in the show notes to join my Speakeasy elevator pitch session, or practice session, I should say. Now, back to the conversation of this episode. How do you talk about yourself? How do you put yourself out there? How do you let your colleagues, your audience, your potential clients, how do you let them know how good you are without sounding like an arrogant twat? It's a difficult one. And one of the things that I often hear from people is not only are they uncomfortable to speak about themselves in this way, but there's this belief that says, well, my work should speak for myself, or my work should speak for itself, I should say. And whilst that's a lovely notion, there is a lot of value. There is a lot of value in overtly calling out your expertise and your experience. The other thing that I would say here is that whilst your work will speak for itself over time, sometimes you can't wait. Sometimes you don't have that time to demonstrate yourself, whether it's a job interview, whether you are a startup founder and you're pitching for new clients, whether you're at a networking function and the people in the room don't know who you are. You need to be able to demonstrate who you are, what you do, why you're good at it, and why you're worth a second or a third or a fourth conversation. So how do we do this? Well, in other episodes, I've spoken about my elevator pitch format or my earn the right format. So I'm not going to get too stuck into that today because I find that the format actually sometimes trips people up, a little bit like me today. But what I do want to do is invite you to consider what I call brag bag stories. Now, yes, I just said the word brag, and I can almost see you shudder as you're listening. We don't like bragging. Now, this is pretty much universal, particularly in Australian culture. It's a little bit different, I believe, if you're listening in the US, where the American culture is far more celebratory of people tooting their own horn, of people overtly sharing their wins and their successes. But if you are Australian, South African, South American, thinking of all of the other cultures, Southeast Asian, then you have been raised to not brag, to not talk about yourself, to not toot your own horn, to not diminish others' light by shining too brightly. We just have been raised to not boast. And whilst there's merit in that, because no one likes listening to someone who sounds too arrogant, too full of themselves, we still need to be able to demonstrate our expertise. So a brag bag story is literally a story that is based in fact and demonstrates your expertise. So, and there's a beautiful saying, and I don't know who originally said it now because it's been misattributed so many times, but there's this saying that goes along the lines of, it ain't bragging if it's fact. And so your brag bag stories are those stories that are fact but demonstrate credibility. So, for example, it might be a story of a project that you were involved in that went really well. It might be stories that come from your personal life about, how you've overcome adversity, or how you've moved interstate or overseas, or how you've picked up your whole family and done amazing things, or how you've got a real taste for adventure. It could be a community project that you've been involved with. Your brag bag stories can come from everywhere in your life. And even if you're young, if you're listening to this and you're young and you're thinking, oh yeah, but I don't have much, you still have brag bag stories because you've been alive. Now, when I coach this particular piece in my in-person workshops, people really struggle with this notion of kind of using their past stories to demonstrate their expertise. But I task them with coming up with at least 10 brag bag stories. And I describe this notion of a brag bag as being a little bit like Santa's sack. The images that we have of Santa Claus at Christmas time, where his sack is bulging full of toys and gifts for kids at Christmas time. Well, imagine instead that you've got this bag full of stories, full of good stories that you can throw over your shoulder, and it's just bulging. This bag is, the bag is so full that the stories are just spilling out. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh, but I could never do that, then my counter to that is, but you've got a caravan, a metaphorical caravan, of course, of crap stories about yourself that you tow around everywhere. You have this metaphorical caravan or trailer full of all of the stories of why you're not good enough, where you stuffed up, where you could have done better. So if you can tow that thing, then you can actually unhook yourself from that trailer or from that caravan, and instead stuff a bag full of brag stories. Now, how do your brag stories then help you talk about yourself? Well, you can scatter these stories then throughout your conversations, whether you use them in your introduction. Hi, I'm Kat and I work with impact-minded, humble leaders, helping them to speak with authority, confidence and impact. The reason I do this is because I watched in the public sector how the people who make a difference are the people who can be heard. They're not necessarily more experienced, have more expertise. They just know how to be heard. That's an example of how I just dropped in a little brag bag story about working in the public sector. When you've got a bag full of brag stories, you can drop these stories into meetings. Oh, it's a bit like that time that I was working with long-term unemployed youth, and we really had to connect with these young people where they were at instead of coming in over the top of them, being all parental or school-like, for example. You see, when you have a collection of brag bag stories, the more present you become to all of the goodness that you've collected over your life. And so then you can just pop them into your conversations. The reason why this process works is it's twofold. First of all, for most of us these days, gross generalization, but for most of us these days, we are in service-based industries, and a lot of us feel like we've kind of accidentally in the roles or in the businesses that we're currently in. It didn't follow a linear path of, I left school, I studied to be a something, and now I'm doing this, and I've just kind of gradually climbed up. Most of us, many of us, are accidental entrepreneurs, leaders, public servants, etc. And the evidence of where we've been is ephemeral. We've worked on projects. We've worked in service industries where we can't point to a building and say, I built that, or we can't point to a park and said, I planted that. Maybe you can, but most of us can't point to the physical evidence of where we've been. Whereas what the brag bag stories do is it actually gives you physical, well, maybe not physical, it gives you metaphorical evidence of where you've been. And the bigger you stuff this bag, the bigger you stuff this evidence. And so as you then get more present to these stories in your life, they come out of your mouth more easily when prompted, when triggered, when you're in a situation where a particular story is relevant. I'm pausing because a whole lot of stories, just crashed into my mind around how this has worked for me. I'm someone who is very much an accidental professional. The breadth of my experience never ceases to amaze me. And when I go to explain all of the things that I've done, I generally can't because it wouldn't make sense. But when I am sitting in a meeting, and I'm thinking of a particular time when I was sitting in a meeting when I was in a public sector role, and we were talking about different community development programs. And I was able to go back to the time where I ran a program for the Juvenile Justice Department, where I worked with young people. Or the time when we were dealing with different youth unemployment issues, again in the public sector, and I was able to go back to my experience in working with long-term unemployed youth. Or the time that I'm talking with employers, again in my public sector role, hospitality employers, about the challenges of employment post-COVID, and I was able to go back to my own hospitality experience. You see, all of your brag bag stories, remember, they're fact, but they're engineered and crafted to be strategically used to demonstrate your experience and your expertise. They can then just be plopped into the conversation, used in the conversation to illustrate your experience. Your brag bag stories is one of the things that we work on a lot in the Impactful Presenters program. In fact, we work on it a lot because as participants move through the program and move through the different frameworks for not only speaking more impactfully, but also overcoming imposter syndrome, we just collect more and more and more and more and more brag bag stories. And it's just the most delightful thing to see people blossom as they realize that they do have far more experience than they had given themselves credit for. We will actually be working on brag bag stories, and I'll actually show you how you can use them as a key way of building your speaking confidence in my upcoming Speaking with Impact workshop series. It's a 3-part workshop series. I'll talk a little bit more about it shortly. But if you are curious to work more on your brag bag stories and how you can use them to edify yourself, then stay tuned to the end where I share all of the information about the Speaking with Impact workshop series. Before I kind of wrap up this philosophical conversation today, I wanted to also remind you of why it's important to let people know how good you are. Why it's important to let people know your experience and your expertise. Because if you can't let people know how you can help them, if you can't let people know the depth or the breadth of your experience, then you're actually doing a disservice to them, not only to yourself. One of the things that I find often with humble leaders is that in their resistance to tooting their own horn, they tell themselves that by being humble, they're of greater service. But if people don't know what you can do for them, then you're not being of service. And this is across the board, whether you are running your own business, whether you're a public servant, or whether you're a corporate contributor. If you're not letting people know what you can bring to the table, then they're missing out on your magic. They're missing out on your awesomeness. They're missing out on your contribution. So your brag bag stories are not just about getting a promotion, pitching your services, or equaling yourself to that arrogant person who does sit in the meeting rooms. It's also about being of service. So if you've kind of been listening, going, oh yeah, this kind of makes sense, but I'm not sure I could do it. If you're impact minded, which is probably why you're listening, if you want to make a greater contribution, if you want to contribute to the conversations that matter, then you need to let people know how you can contribute to their lives, to the contribution, to their causes. So, my homework for you, homework, isn't that a funny school-orientated thing? My task, my challenge, should you choose to accept it, is to go looking for your brag bag stories. Just go back over the start with the first few years and then go back the few years before that. Not in a resume kind of a way, not in a I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that, but rather what are the highlights? What are the stories? What are the physical examples that you have of what you've done, where you've been, and how you've contributed? And as you pull together those stories, just practice dropping them into conversation and seeing what happens. Now, as I said, I have my standout, and I do say standout because let me just quickly do the numbers. Yep, more than 2,500 people have now gone through my Speaking with Impact workshops, and they are extraordinary. People tell me that they learn more in these 3 days than they've ever learned in any other public speaking or confidence program for that matter. And they're entirely free. So it's a 3-day or 3-part workshop series that takes place Tuesday the 10th of June, Wednesday the 11th of June, and Thursday the 12th of June for half an hour a day. Half an hour, that's it. It's just half an hour in your lunch break if you are on the east coast of Australia, and your morning tea break if you're on the western coast of Australia. And the Speaking with Impact workshop series will give you all of the tools that you need to speak with greater authority, greater confidence, and greater impact. If you struggle to collect your thoughts fast enough, if you struggle with imposter syndrome, you will love this workshop. You truly, truly, truly will. And yes, it is recorded, and yes, registered participants will get the replay. So that link is also in my show notes if you happen to be listening after the Speakeasy elevator pitch session. What else did I need to tell you today? I think that's enough. I think that is enough for one little episode. So with any luck, if you're listening to this before the 22nd of May, I might see you at the Speakeasy elevator pitch practice session. And I really hope that I get to see you at the Speaking with Impact workshop series that kicks off on Tuesday, the 10th of June. In the meantime, go looking for those brag bag stories, and here's to confidence, and here's to impact. I'll catch you soon.